California sun beat down mercilessly on the Naval Special Warfare Command firing range as Lieutenant Sarah Castellano stepped out of the government sedan. Her Marine Corps dress uniform was crisp despite the heat, ribbons gleaming on her chest, including the expert rifle marksmanship badge that had earned her this controversial invitation. She adjusted her cover and walked toward the cluster of buildings where America's most elite warriors trained. Every step felt like walking through quicksand. She could feel them watching. Dozens of Navy SEALs gathered in small groups near the equipment shed, their conversations dying as she approached. Some crossed their arms. Others exchanged knowing glances. A few didn't even try to hide their smirks. Sarah had expected this. She'd been the first woman in every shooting competition she'd ever entered since joining the Marines 6 years ago. The doubt, the skepticism, the barely concealed hostility, it was old news. But this was different. This wasn't a local competition or even a Marine Corps championship. This was Naval Special Warfare Command's elite inter-service sniper competition, an invitation-only event where the military's best marksmen competed for bragging rights and career-defining recognition. And she was the first woman who'd ever qualified to attend. Lieutenant Castellano, a gruff voice cut through the tension. Sarah turned to see a mountain of a man approaching. Master Chief Garrett Vance was a legend in special operations circles, a Vietnam veteran with a silver beard and eyes that had seen too much combat. His weathered face was impossible to read as he looked her up and down. "Master Chief," she snapped a salute. He returned it casually. "Welcome to NSW Command. I trust your drive up from Pendleton was uneventful." "Yes, Master Chief." "Good," he gestured toward the equipment shed. "Let's get you checked in and issued your gear. Competition starts at 600 tomorrow. You'll bunk in Building 3 tonight." As they walked, Sarah noticed the conversations resuming behind them, hushed but animated. She caught fragments: affirmative action, political statement, won't last a day. The equipment shed was a treasure trove of military hardware. Long tables displayed an impressive array of rifles: modern M40A6s, Barrett M82s, SR-25s with advanced optics packages. Sarah's pulse quickened. She'd trained on standard-issue equipment at Quantico, but this was next-level gear. "All right, people, listen up," Vance's voice boomed across the shed. "We've got 15 competitors this year. Mix of SEALs, Marine Scout Snipers, Army Rangers, and Air Force Special Operations. Each of you will be assigned your weapon system for the duration of the competition." A young SEAL with Lieutenant Bars stepped forward with a clipboard, calling out names and equipment assignments. Sarah listened as competitors received state-of-the-art rifles with thermal optics, laser rangefinders, and advanced ballistic computers. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, SR-25 with Schmidt and Bender scope. Captain Rodriguez, Barrett M82A1 with Leupold Mark IV. Staff Sergeant Chen, M40A6 with Nightforce optics. The list continued. Each assignment was met with satisfied nods. These warriors were getting the tools that matched their skills. Finally, Lieutenant Castellano. Sarah stepped forward, her heart hammering. This was it, her first impression, her first equipment, the foundation of everything she'd worked toward. Master Chief Vance reached beneath the table and pulled out a battered green case that looked older than Sarah herself. The metal clasps were rusted. The canvas covering was frayed and stained. Several SEALs chuckled as he set it on the table with a heavy thunk. "Your rifle, Lieutenant." Sarah opened the case slowly. Inside, nestled in deteriorating foam, lay a Vietnam-era M14, a battle rifle that had seen better decades. The wood stock was scratched and worn. The barrel showed honest use. And mounted on top was a scope that had clearly been dropped hard. The mounting bracket was bent at an awkward angle, and through the glass, Sarah could see the reticle was completely misaligned, twisted almost 45 degrees. The shed fell silent. Sarah ran her fingers along the rifle's receiver, feeling every scratch and dent. This weapon had been in combat. Someone had trusted their life to it in the jungles of Southeast Asia, but the scope was completely unusable. Anyone could see that. "Is there a problem, Lieutenant?" Vance's voice was neutral, but his eyes were challenging her. Every person in that shed was watching, waiting, expecting her to complain, to demand equal equipment, to prove she needed special treatment. Sarah met Vance's stare. "No, Master Chief, no problem." "Good. You've got 30 minutes to zero your weapon on the 100-yard range before dark." Sarah lifted the rifle from its case, feeling its weight. Heavier than modern rifles, more unwieldy, but there was something honest about it, solid. She examined the scope more closely. The mounting screws were stripped. The internal mechanism was damaged beyond field repair. This scope would never function properly again. "Need help figuring out how to work it?" Someone called out. She didn't see who. More laughter rippled through the shed. Sarah's jaw tightened, but her hands remained steady. She reached up to the scope mount and began loosening what screws still turned. The damaged scope came free in her hands. Beneath it, she found what she was looking for, the rifle's original iron sights. Simple, reliable, no batteries, no glass, no technology to fail. Just steel and skill. She removed the scope completely and set it aside, then worked the action to ensure it functioned smoothly. The bolt moved with well-worn ease. She checked the barrel, clean, properly maintained. Someone had cared for this rifle, even if they'd given it to her as a test. "I don't need it," Sarah said quietly, her voice cutting through the silence. She chambered an empty round, testing the feel, then looked up at Master Chief Vance. "Iron sights will do just fine." The shed erupted in murmurs. A few SEALs exchanged incredulous looks. One actually laughed out loud. "She's going to shoot iron sights at 600 yards, against our optics." Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, Reaper, according to his call sign patch, studied her with renewed interest. He was a lean man with calculating eyes and the quiet confidence of someone who'd survived multiple deployments. Unlike the others, he wasn't smiling. He was evaluating. Master Chief Vance's weathered face remained impassive. "Your call, Lieutenant. Range is outside. You've got 28 minutes of daylight left." Sarah collected her ammunition allotment, military-grade 7.62 NATO rounds, and headed for the door. As she passed the other competitors, she heard the whispers resume. "This is going to be embarrassing. She won't make it past day one." What was Command thinking? Sarah stepped into the golden California evening, the Pacific breeze cooling her face. The 100-yard range stretched before her, targets waiting in neat rows. She walked to the firing line, set her rifle down carefully, and began her pre-shoot routine, the same one her father had taught her in the mountains above Big Sur when she was 12 years old. Behind her, several competitors had followed outside to watch. They leaned against the shed wall, arms crossed, ready for the show. Sarah ignored them. She loaded 5 rounds, assumed a solid prone position, and aligned her iron sights on the target. No computers calculated windage. No laser measured distance. No thermal imaging revealed heat signatures. Just her eyes, her breath, and her father's voice in her memory. "Technology is a crutch, Sarah. Learn to shoot with your heart and your head. Everything else is just decoration." She exhaled slowly, let her heartbeat settle into a steady rhythm, and squeezed the trigger. The M14 roared, its recoil solid and true against her shoulder. Downrange, a perfect hole appeared in the 10-ring. Sarah chambered her second round, made a minute adjustment for the rifle's personality, and fired again. Another perfect 10. By her 5th shot, the group of spectators had grown silent. All 5 rounds had clustered within a 2-inch circle at center mass, performance that matched or exceeded what the others had achieved with their advanced optics. Sarah stood, cleared her weapon, and turned back toward the shed. Master Chief Vance stood at the edge of the range now, binoculars in hand. He'd been watching through the glass. Their eyes met across the distance. Vance nodded once, barely perceptible, then turned and walked away. Lieutenant Commander Morrison remained, still studying her. "Where did you learn to shoot like that, Lieutenant?" Sarah shouldered her rifle. "My father, Marine Scout Sniper, Key San, 1968. He taught you well." "He taught me that real marksmen don't need crutches, sir. They need discipline." Morrison's lips curved into a slight smile. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting." Sarah walked past him toward her assigned barracks, the old M14 comfortable on her shoulder. Behind her, the sunset painted the Pacific coast in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. But tonight she'd already sent a message. "Underestimate her at your own risk." Dawn broke over Naval Special Warfare Command with the kind of crystalline clarity that made snipers smile. Not a cloud in the sky, minimal wind, perfect visibility stretching for miles across the range. Sarah had been awake since 4:30, running through her morning routine with mechanical precision, physical training, shower, equipment check, and a breakfast that was pure fuel: oatmeal, eggs, black coffee. Now, standing on the firing line at 5:45, she could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on every competitor. 15 of the military's best marksmen, all gathered for one purpose: to prove they were the deadliest shooter in America's arsenal. "Gentlemen and lady," Master Chief Vance's voice boomed across the range, "welcome to day one. Today's challenge is straightforward: 600-yard precision shooting. 5 rounds, 5 targets, standard silhouettes. You'll be scored on accuracy and grouping. Wind is calm at 4 miles per hour from the west. Temperature is 68 degrees, humidity at 42%. He paused, his hard eyes scanning the line. "Your equipment may be different, but the standard is the same: excellence. Nothing less." Sarah glanced down the line at her competition. To her left, 3 Navy SEALs stood with their advanced rifles, tactical gear gleaming in the morning sun. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, Reaper, was among them, his SR-25 equipped with a Schmidt and Bender scope that cost more than her first car. Beyond him, Army Rangers and Air Force Special Operators adjusted their weapons, checking ballistic computers and laser rangefinders. And then there was Sarah, holding a rifle that had been obsolete before she was born. "Shooters will rotate in alphabetical order by last name," Vance continued. "Lieutenant Castellano, you're up third." Perfect. She'd see how others performed first, get a read on the range conditions, watch for subtle wind patterns the flags might miss. The first shooter was Captain Bradley, an Army Ranger with a reputation for cold-bore shots. His rifle was a thing of beauty, a custom AR-10 with every upgrade imaginable. He assumed his position, and the range fell silent except for the gentle flutter of wind flags. 5 shots rang out in steady succession, professional, controlled. "For 10s, 1-9, the range officer called out. Total score 49. Solid performance. The 9 had clipped the edge of the 10 ring, barely a miss at all. Bradley stood and nodded, satisfied. The second shooter was a SEAL named Lieutenant Haskins. Sarah had heard he'd completed 3 deployments to Afghanistan, racking up over 30 confirmed kills. He approached the line with quiet confidence, his M40A6 an extension of his body. His 5 shots came even faster than Bradley's. 5-10s, perfect score 50. Murmurs of approval rippled through the competitors. Haskins had set the bar high. "Lieutenant Castellano, you're up," Vance called. Sarah walked to the firing line, every eye following her. She could hear the whispered comments. "Let's see what she's got. Iron sights at 600, this should be interesting. Probably won't even hit the target." She tuned them out. Years of competitions had taught her how to build walls in her mind, creating a space where only she and the target existed. Sarah set down her shooting mat, assumed a solid prone position, and loaded 5 rounds into the M14's magazine. The brass cartridges caught the morning sun as she chambered the first round. 600 yards downrange, her target waited, a simple silhouette black against the white backing. Without optics, it appeared small, barely larger than her thumbnail from this distance. But Sarah didn't need to see details. She needed to see the fundamentals. She settled her cheek against the wooden stock, feeling its familiar contours. Through the iron sights, she aligned the front post with the rear aperture, creating that perfect figure eight that her father had drilled into her consciousness. The target sat at the top of her front sight post. Now came the mathematics. Range 600 yards. Wind 4 miles per hour from the west, call it half a minute of angle. Elevation, sea level, no significant adjustment needed. Temperature, cool morning, air is dense, bullets will fly true. Humidity is moderate, negligible effect at this distance. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. The rifle doesn't think, Sarah. You do the thinking. You do the math. The rifle just does what you tell it. Sarah made her adjustments, shifting her point of aim ever so slightly to compensate for the gentle westerly breeze. She controlled her breathing, letting it settle into the rhythm she'd practiced 10,000 times. Inhale, exhale, natural pause. The world narrowed to a single point. Her finger caressed the trigger, not a pull, but a gentle squeeze that seemed to surprise even her when the rifle fired. Crack! The M14's recoil was sharp but manageable, driving straight back into her shoulder. Downrange, through the iron sights, she couldn't see where the bullet had struck, but she felt it. She knew. Center mass. Sarah chambered her second round, her movements economical and practiced. She'd learned long ago not to rush between shots. Each one deserved its own moment, its own calculation. The wind hadn't changed, temperature steady. She made an infinitesimal adjustment. The rifle's barrel had warmed slightly, which would affect the bullet's trajectory by mere centimeters, but at 600 yards, centimeters mattered. Her second shot broke clean. Third shot, fourth, fifth. Each one felt perfect. That indefinable sensation when everything aligns. Breath, trigger squeeze, sight picture. The universe itself seeming to hold still for that fraction of a second when the firing pin strikes the primer. Sarah cleared her weapon, stood, and stepped back from the line. Her face betrayed nothing, but her heart hammered in her chest. She'd done everything right, but without a spotting scope, she couldn't see her results. The range officer walked downrange with binoculars, examining her target. The silence stretched. Sarah could feel every competitor's eyes on her back. The range officer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. Stand by for scoring. Master Chief Vance walked to the observation post, took the binoculars, and looked for himself. His weathered face remained impassive, but Sarah noticed his eyebrows rise slightly, the first crack in his stoic expression. Vance lowered the binoculars and keyed his radio. Confirm that score, petty officer. Confirmed, Master Chief. Vance's voice boomed across the range. 5 tens, perfect score, 50, all rounds within a 4-inch group. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah allowed herself the smallest smile, not because she was surprised, she'd felt every shot land true, but because she could feel the shift in the air around her. The whispers had stopped. The smirks had vanished. Lieutenant Commander Morrison was the first to speak. He'd moved closer to the observation post to see her target through the spotting scope. That's a tighter group than mine was, he said, loud enough for others to hear. And I was using a scope that costs $8,000. Beginner's luck, someone muttered from the back of the group. Morrison turned, his eyes hard. Luck doesn't put 5 rounds in 4 inches at 600 yards, skill does. Captain Bradley, the Army Ranger, approached Sarah with his hand extended. Hell of a shooting, Lieutenant. That was impressive. Thank you, sir. But not everyone was convinced. Lieutenant Haskins, the SEAL who'd also shot a perfect 50, crossed his arms. One good run doesn't prove anything. Let's see if she can keep it up when the pressure increases. Looking forward to it, Sarah replied evenly. Master Chief Vance consulted his clipboard. Current standings after round 1. Lieutenant Haskins and Lieutenant Castellano tied for first place with perfect scores. Lieutenant Commander Morrison in third with 49 points. He looked up, his gaze sweeping across the assembled shooters. This competition is far from over. We've got 3 more days and increasingly difficult challenges ahead. Day 2 starts at 600 tomorrow, moving targets at variable distances. Get some rest. As the group dispersed, Morrison caught up with Sarah. That was legitimate shooting back there. Just doing what I was trained to do, sir. Your father, you said Kisan, 1968. Sarah nodded. Staff Sergeant Daniel Castellano, Marine Scout Sniper. He had over 40 confirmed kills during the siege. And he taught you everything with iron sights. He said technology was a tool but not a crutch. He wanted me to understand the fundamentals first. Master the basics, he'd say, and everything else is just window dressing. Morrison smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually serious face. Smart man. I've seen too many shooters who can't hit anything when their electronics fail. They're lost without their computers doing the math for them. A rifle is just a tool, Sarah said, echoing her father's words. The real weapon is up here. She tapped her temple. I'm starting to believe that. Morrison extended his hand. Jake Morrison, though everyone calls me Reaper. Sarah Castellano, though I'm guessing you already knew that. Fair point. He glanced back at the range where her target was being collected for official scoring records. You've got people nervous, Sarah. That's a good thing. Means you're a threat. I'm not here to make friends, sir. Good, because this competition is about to get a lot harder. Moving targets tomorrow, distances from 400 to 1,000 yards, variable speeds, limited engagement windows. Your iron sights are going to make that challenging. I've shot moving targets before. Not like these, but there was respect in his voice, not doubt. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to test everyone. As Morrison walked away, Sarah headed toward the armory to clean her rifle. The morning sun climbed higher, promising a hot afternoon. She had the rest of the day to prepare for tomorrow's challenge, to study her equipment, to run through scenarios in her mind. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She'd proven she belonged here. The question was, could she stay on top? Only time and 4 more days of competition would tell. Day 2 arrived with the metallic taste of competition in the air. Sarah woke at 400 to the sound of rain pattering against her barracks window, a light drizzle that would complicate everything. Moving targets were difficult enough in perfect conditions. Add moisture, changing light and variable winds, and the challenge multiplied exponentially. She reached for her gear in the darkness, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. But something felt wrong. Her ammunition box, which she'd carefully organized the night before, seemed lighter than it should be. Sarah flicked on her small tactical light and opened the container. 30 rounds. She'd counted 45 last night. Her jaw tightened. 15 rounds were missing, gone without explanation. Someone had entered her room while she slept. The door lock showed fresh scratches around the mechanism. Amateur work but effective. Sarah checked her remaining ammunition carefully, inspecting each cartridge under the light. These appeared intact, no visible damage, proper weight, correct seating. But the missing rounds sent a clear message. Someone wanted her to fail. She logged the discrepancy in her competition notebook, noting the time and details. When this was over, she'd report it properly. But right now, she had a competition to win, and dwelling on sabotage wouldn't help her shoot straight. By 600, the rain had stopped, leaving the range shrouded in morning mist. The moisture made everything glisten, target rails, grass, even the bullets waiting in magazines. Master Chief Vance stood at the command post, rain gear over his uniform, looking like a statue carved from granite. Day 2, gentlemen and Lieutenant Castellano, he began, his voice cutting through the damp air. Today you face moving targets. Distances range from 400 to 1,000 yards. Speeds vary from 2 to 15 miles per hour. Direction changes are random. You'll have 3 seconds per target, see it, calculate, engage, hit. Miss and you lose points. 10 targets total. The system is computerized and unpredictable. Sarah glanced at her competition. Lieutenant Haskins looked confident, his high-tech rifle equipped with a ballistic computer that could calculate moving target leads automatically. Morrison checked his equipment methodically, his expression focused. Others conferred in small groups, discussing strategy. She was alone, by choice and by circumstance. Lieutenant Castellano, Vance called out, checking his roster. You're shooting 5th today. 5th position meant she'd see how others performed first. Good for reconnaissance, bad for first mover advantage. Sarah nodded and moved to the observation area, watching as the first shooter approached the line. The targets were ingenious, silhouettes mounted on rails that ran parallel to the shooting line, perpendicular to it, and at diagonal angles. Each one moved at different speeds, appeared at random intervals, and stayed visible for exactly 3 seconds before disappearing. Electronic sensors recorded hits and misses with unforgiving accuracy. The first shooter, an Air Force Special Operations sniper named Captain Williams, managed 6 hits out of 10. Respectable but not exceptional. Second shooter, 7 hits. Third, 5 hits. The moving targets were proving brutally difficult. Fourth was Morrison. Sarah watched intently as he assumed his position, his SR-25 ready. The first target appeared at 600 yards, moving left to right at roughly 10 miles per hour. Morrison's rifle barked, hit. Second target, 800 yards, moving right to left, hit. He worked through the sequence with mechanical precision. 9 hits, 1 miss, the range officer announced. Lieutenant Commander Morrison leads day 2. Morrison stood and caught Sarah's eye. There was a question in his gaze. Can you match that with iron sights? Lieutenant Castellano, you're up. Sarah walked to the line, feeling the damp ground beneath her boots. She chambered her first round and assumed a modified prone position, one that allowed for faster transitions between targets. With iron sights, she couldn't track targets through a scope. She'd have to acquire, calculate, and fire almost instantaneously. Moving targets are about prediction, not reaction, her father's voice echoed in her memory. She was 12 years old again in the mountains above Big Sur, watching deer move through the forest. You don't aim where they are. You aim where they're going to be. Feel their rhythm, become part of their movement. The first target appeared at 500 yards, moving diagonally across her field of view at moderate speed. Sarah's mind processed the variables instantly. Distance, velocity, angle of movement, wind drift. Her front sight post led the target by what felt like instinct, but was actually thousands of hours of practice translated into muscle memory. She squeezed the trigger. Hit. Target 2 appeared at 900 yards, barely visible through the morning haze, moving perpendicular to her position. Longer distance meant more lead time, more wind drift, more variables. Sarah adjusted, her breathing controlled, and fired. Hit. She moved through the sequence like a machine, each calculation happening faster than conscious thought. Target 3, hit. Target 4, hit. Target 5, hit. 6, 7, 8. The 9th target was the hardest yet, 1,000 yards, moving at maximum speed, appearing from behind cover for only 3 seconds. Sarah saw it, calculated the lead, adjusted for the increased distance and speed, and fired in one smooth motion. The sensor light remained dark, miss. She'd let it too far, damn. 1 target remained. Sarah cleared her mind, refusing to dwell on the miss. The final target would determine if she could match Morrison's score or fall behind. It appeared at 650 yards, moving erratically, speed changes designed to throw off even computer-assisted calculations. Sarah watched its movement for 1 second, identifying the pattern. It wasn't truly random. There was a rhythm, a sequence. 2 seconds left. She led the target, accounting for its deceleration phase, and fired. Hit. 9 hits, 1 miss, the range officer called out. Lieutenant Castellano ties Lieutenant Commander Morrison for first place on day 2. The range fell silent. Tying the competition's best shooter while using iron sights against moving targets was beyond what anyone had expected. Even Haskins, who'd shot next and managed only 7 hits, looked at her with grudging respect. But Sarah felt the weight of that 1 miss. It nagged at her, even as competitors congratulated her on matching Morrison's performance. Perfect wasn't good enough. She needed to be better. As the morning progressed, the remaining shooters completed their runs. The final standings showed Morrison and Sarah tied for the day at 9 hits each, with Haskins in third at 7 hits. Overall competition standings had Morrison in first by 1 point, his perfect score from day 1 giving him the edge. Sarah was in second place, close but not leading. During the lunch break, she found Morrison near the equipment shed, cleaning his rifle. He looked up as she approached. "Hell of a performance out there," he said genuinely. "That 9th target was nearly impossible. I missed it too on my practice runs yesterday." "You practiced yesterday?" "We all did after the day 1 competition ended, didn't you?" Sarah's expression darkened. "I wasn't informed there were practice sessions." Morrison's eyes narrowed. "That's not right. Everyone should have been notified." He paused, studying her face. "What else has gone wrong?" She hesitated, then decided trust had to start somewhere. "Someone took 15 rounds from my ammunition supply last night, broke into my quarters while I slept." "Did you report it?" "Documented it. I'll file a formal report after the competition." "File it now," Morrison said firmly. "This isn't just about competition integrity, it's about your safety. Tampering with a competitor's equipment or supplies is grounds for immediate disqualification and possible criminal charges." "I don't want special treatment." "It's not special treatment, it's basic fairness." Morrison stood, his expression serious. "Look, Sarah, I don't know what you're trying to prove here, but you don't have to do this alone. You've earned your place. Let the system work." Sarah considered his words. Pride versus pragmatism. Her father had always said pride was a sniper's worst enemy. It clouded judgment and got people killed. "I'll report it to Master Chief Vance before dinner," she said finally. "Good." Morrison returned to cleaning his rifle, then added, "For what it's worth, that shooting this morning was some of the best I've ever seen. Iron sights against moving targets at 1,000 yards. Most people would say that's impossible. My father never taught me to believe in impossible." "Kisan, right? What was his final tally?" 43 confirmed, but he never talked about the number. He said every shot was a human life and that weight never leaves you. Morrison nodded slowly. "He sounds like he was a wise man." "He was. He taught me that being a sniper isn't about killing, it's about protecting. Every shot you take saves friendly lives. That's the burden and the honor." "I wish more shooters understood that." Morrison finished reassembling his rifle. Day 3 tomorrow, long-range precision in variable conditions. Weather forecast says possible rain and wind. Your iron sights might actually give you an advantage if the electronics start acting up. "We'll see," Sarah said noncommittally. But as she walked away, she felt something shift. Morrison wasn't just a competitor anymore. He was becoming an ally. And in a competition designed to isolate and test individual warriors, having one person in your corner made all the difference. That evening, Sarah reported the missing ammunition and broken lock to Master Chief Vance. His face remained impassive as he took notes, but his eyes betrayed a cold anger. "I'll have security review the barracks footage," he said quietly. and I'll personally inspect your equipment and supplies going forward. This ends now. Thank you, Master Chief. Don't thank me, Lieutenant, just keep shooting the way you have been. He paused, then added, Your father would be proud. Those 5 words meant more than any trophy ever could. Day 3 arrived with a vengeance. Sarah woke at 3:30 to the sound of wind howling against the barracks like a living thing. Through her window, she could see palm trees bending at impossible angles, their fronds whipping frantically in the gale. Rain didn't fall. It attacked horizontally, driven by winds that the weather report would later clock at 28 miles per hour with gusts exceeding 35. Any reasonable person would have canceled today's competition. But Navy SEALs weren't reasonable people, and neither was Master Chief Vance. By 600, 15 competitors stood on the coastal firing range, rain gear doing little to keep out the driving moisture. The range had been relocated to a clifftop position overlooking the Pacific, where wind patterns were notoriously unpredictable, eddies, gusts, and sudden calms that could change bullet trajectories in microseconds. Day 3, Vance's voice boomed over the wind, is about adaptation. Combat doesn't wait for perfect weather. Your enemy doesn't care if conditions are ideal. Today you shoot in the storm. He gestured toward the targets barely visible through the rain and mist. Distances from 600 to 1,200 yards, 5 targets at each distance, variable wind conditions. Your equipment will be tested. Your skills will be tested. Most importantly, your mind will be tested. Sarah glanced down the line. Several competitors were already having trouble. Rain hammered their advanced optics, creating condensation inside the sealed scopes. One shooter wiped frantically at his lens, trying to clear the fog that kept reforming. Another tapped his ballistic computer, which flickered and died. Moisture had penetrated the supposedly waterproof casing. Morrison stood stoic, his SR-25 wrapped in a rain cover, his expression unreadable. Haskins looked frustrated, constantly adjusting his scope as water droplets distorted his sight picture. And then there was Sarah, standing in the deluge with her Vietnam-era M14 and its simple iron sights. No electronics to short out, no glass to fog, no batteries to fail. Just steel, wood, and skill. Shooters will engage alphabetically, Vance announced. But first, we have a modification. Due to weather conditions, anyone who wishes to withdraw can do so without penalty to their overall standing. Your Day 3 score will be recorded as your average from Days 1 and 2. 2 competitors immediately stepped forward, accepting the offer. An Army Ranger and an Air Force sniper, both experienced warriors who recognized when conditions exceeded equipment capabilities. 13 remained. The first shooter was a SEAL named Lieutenant Briggs. His expensive rifle, state-of-the-art just yesterday, was now betraying him. Through the spotting scope in the observation bunker, Sarah watched his first shot go wide by several feet. The ballistic computer, struggling to calculate wind values that changed every second, had given him bad data. His second shot was closer, but still missed the target completely at 800 yards. By his 5th shot, he'd scored only 2 hits out of 5. He stood, clearly frustrated, and moved off the line shaking his head. Second shooter, 3 hits. Third, 1 hit. The storm was winning. Lieutenant Castellano, Vance called. Sarah moved to the line, her M14 slick with rain but functioning perfectly. She assumed her prone position, feeling cold water soak through her uniform. The discomfort didn't matter. Pain was temporary. Performance was permanent. Through her iron sights, she could barely see the first target at 600 yards through the rain and mist. But visibility wasn't everything. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the wind against her face. It came from the west, hard and steady, with a slight upward component from the cliff's thermal currents. When you can't see, you feel, her father had taught her during a foggy morning hunt in the Sierras. The wind talks to you. The air has weight. Trust your senses. Sarah opened her eyes, made her calculations, and aimed into empty space, a full 3 feet left of the target to compensate for the brutal crosswind. To anyone watching, it looked like she was aiming at nothing. She fired. 600 yards downrange, the bullet curved through the storm and punched dead center into the silhouette. Even the range officer's voice showed surprise. Hit, center mass. Sarah chambered her next round. The second target was at 800 yards and the wind had shifted. She could feel the change, subtle but significant. A gust from the northwest now, slightly stronger. She adjusted her point of aim even further left, adding elevation for the increased distance and wind resistance. Hit. Third target, 1,000 yards. The rain intensified, turning the air into a gray wall of water. Sarah waited, breathing slowly, feeling for a lull in the wind. There, a momentary calm, perhaps 2 seconds long. She fired immediately. Hit. Fourth target, 1,200 yards, nearly 3/4 of a mile through a Pacific storm. Sarah's calculations became pure instinct, years of training compressed into split-second decisions. Lead left, compensate up, fire during the breath between gusts. Hit. Fifth and final target, 900 yards but positioned at an angle that created complex wind patterns. Sarah studied it for 10 seconds, watching how the rain fell, how the mist moved, reading the invisible currents in the air itself. She aimed what seemed like 5 feet from the target and squeezed. Hit. 5 for 5, the range officer announced, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. Perfect score for Lieutenant Castellano in storm conditions. The competitors watching from the observation bunker fell silent. Even Morrison, who'd been preparing for his own run, stopped to stare at the target verification display. Sarah stood, cleared her weapon, and moved off the line without ceremony. Water dripped from her uniform, her hair plastered to her head, but her face showed only calm focus. Morrison approached her as she entered the bunker. He paused, searching for words. That was supernatural. How did you even see the targets? Sometimes you don't need to see everything, Sarah replied, wringing water from her sleeves. You just need to feel what matters. Your father taught you that. In the mountains. He'd take me hunting in fog so thick you couldn't see 10 feet. Said it would make me a better shooter when conditions were clear. Morrison shook his head in admiration. I've got a computer that cost the taxpayers 15 grand, and it can't tell me what the wind is doing. You're doing it by feel. Computers are great until they're not, Sarah said simply. The competition continued. Morrison managed 3 hits out of 5, an impressive performance given the conditions, but nowhere near Sarah's perfect score. Haskins, struggling with fogged optics, managed only 2 hits. The remaining shooters fared even worse, with several scoring 0 hits in the impossible conditions. By noon, when the competition ended for the day, the standings had shifted dramatically. First place, Lieutenant Sarah Castellano. Second place, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison. Third place, Lieutenant Haskins. Sarah had taken the lead for the first time. As competitors filed out of the observation bunker, several approached her with newfound respect. Captain Bradley, the Army Ranger who'd shot first on day 1, extended his hand. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I didn't think you belonged here. I was wrong. No apology necessary, Captain. You just didn't know what I was capable of. Now you do. Others followed, quiet acknowledgments, nods of respect, even a few requests for her to share her techniques. The tide had turned. She was no longer the outsider being tested. She was the competitor to beat. But not everyone was pleased. Lieutenant Haskins stormed past without a word, his face dark with anger. And watching from the command post, another SEAL, Lieutenant Commander Harrison, one of the senior instructors, scowled as he studied the scoreboard. Morrison noticed Harrison's expression and moved close to Sarah. Watch out for him. he said quietly. Harrison's old school doesn't believe women belong in combat roles. He's been vocal about it. I've dealt with his type before. Not like this. Harrison has influence, and he doesn't lose gracefully. Sarah met Morrison's concerned gaze. I can't control what he does. I can only control my shooting. Just be careful, keep your equipment secure, trust your instincts. Before Sarah could respond, Master Chief Vance's voice boomed across the range. Lieutenant Castellano, a word. Sarah approached the command post, where Vance stood alone, rain dripping from his weathered face. For a long moment he simply looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice lower than usual. Your father and I served together. Did you know that? Sarah's heart skipped. No, Master Chief, he never mentioned your name. March 1968. Key San Combat Base. I was a young corpsman fresh in-country, scared out of my mind. NVA had us surrounded, over 20,000 of them against 6,000 Marines. The shelling was constant. Hell on earth. Vance's eyes grew distant, seeing another time. One morning, NVA sappers got inside our perimeter. They were heading for the aid station, would have killed everyone there, including me. Your father was positioned on Hill 861. He took them out, one by one in the fog and smoke. 17 shots, 17 kills. Saved my life and 30 wounded Marines. Sarah felt tears threatening but forced them back. He never talked much about the war. The good ones never do. Vance fixed her with a penetrating stare. I need to know something, Lieutenant. Why are you really here? Is this about proving women belong in combat, making a political statement? No, Master Chief. Then what? Sarah chose her words carefully. My father taught me to shoot. The Marines taught me to be a warrior. But I've spent 6 years fighting to be taken seriously, to be judged on my skills rather than my gender. I'm here because I earned this spot, and I'm going to win because I'm the best shooter in this competition. Vance's weathered face cracked into the smallest smile. That's the right answer. Your father had that same fire, quiet until someone questioned his ability, then he'd let his rifle do the talking. He taught me well. He did. Vance's expression hardened again. Security footage showed Lieutenant Commander Harrison near your barracks the night your ammunition went missing. No proof he took anything, but the timing is suspicious. I'm watching him. Sarah's jaw tightened. So Morrison had been right to warn her. What should I do, Master Chief? What you've been doing. Shoot straight, stay focused. Let me handle Harrison. Vance paused. Tomorrow is day 4, night shooting. Your iron sights will be a severe disadvantage. The other competitors have thermal and night vision equipment. I'll adapt. I believe you will. Vance glanced at the scoreboard where her name sat at the top. Your father would be proud, Sarah. You're not just representing yourself anymore. You're showing every woman in the military what's possible. As Sarah walked back to the barracks to dry off and prepare for tomorrow, she felt the weight of Vance's words. This competition had started as a personal challenge. Prove she belonged, honor her father's legacy, earn respect through performance. But somewhere along the way, it had become bigger than that. Now she was carrying the hopes of every woman who'd been told she wasn't strong enough, wasn't tough enough, didn't belong. The storm outside was passing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. And Sarah Castellano would be ready. The sun set over Naval Special Warfare Command at 1847 hours, painting the Pacific sky in shades of blood orange and deep purple. By 1930, full darkness had descended, and with it came the most challenging test yet. Sarah stood on the night firing range, watching as her competitors checked their equipment. Thermal imaging scopes glowed with faint electronic light. Night vision devices were mounted and calibrated. Laser rangefinders with infrared capabilities were tested and retested. Every shooter had technology specifically designed for darkness, equipment that turned night into day, making targets visible as clearly as noon. Every shooter except Sarah. Her M14 had no mounting rails for night vision, no thermal capability, no electronic aids whatsoever. In the darkness, she was as blind as any soldier from her father's generation, relying on eyes that nature had designed for daylight, not for hunting in the dark. Day 4, Master Chief Vance announced, his voice carried by speakers around the range, tests your ability to operate in denied environments. Night combat. No ambient light beyond starlight. Targets at ranges from 400 to 1,200 yards. But tonight, we add complexity. A murmur ran through the assembled competitors. Tonight's scenarios include hostage situations. You'll see silhouettes, some hostile, some civilian. You must identify friend from foe, engage threats, and preserve innocent lives. Shoot a hostage and you're disqualified immediately. Hesitate too long and the hostage dies anyway. You'll have 3 seconds per scenario to assess and engage. Sarah's stomach tightened. This wasn't just about shooting anymore. It was about judgment, about life and death decisions compressed into heartbeats. Lieutenant Castellano, Vance continued, his voice carefully neutral, you're aware your equipment lacks night vision capability. Yes, Master Chief. You're authorized to withdraw from tonight's competition. Your Day 4 score would be calculated as your average from previous days. Every eye turned to her. In the darkness, she could feel their gazes, some hopeful she'd quit, others curious to see if she'd actually try this impossible task. Morrison stood nearby, his expression concerned. Sarah, he said quietly, this isn't like the storm. In daylight, you could at least see the targets. In this darkness with iron sights, it's not just difficult, it's nearly impossible. Nearly, Sarah replied. Even I'm going to struggle, and I've got 20 grand worth of night vision equipment. You'll be shooting blind. Not blind, just shooting differently. Sarah thought back to one of her father's final lessons before he passed. She'd been 19, home on leave from basic training. He'd taken her to the mountains at midnight, no moon, clouds covering the stars. Turn off your flashlight, he'd said. Dad, I can't see anything. Not yet. Give your eyes time. Let them adjust. Human eyes are better than you think. We've just forgotten how to use them. They'd waited in silence for 30 minutes. Gradually, impossibly, the darkness had revealed itself, not as daylight but as gradations of shadow. Shapes emerged. Movement became visible. The night wasn't black. It was dark gray, charcoal, hints of silver from distant stars. Now, her father had whispered, can you see? And she could. Not clearly, not perfectly, but enough. I'm shooting, Sarah told Morrison firmly. Vance nodded once. Shooters will engage in reverse order of current standings. Lieutenant Castellano, you're last tonight. Sarah spent the next 2 hours watching others perform. Morrison went first, his night vision equipment allowing him to identify and engage targets with impressive accuracy. He completed 8 scenarios successfully, missing only 2 where the lighting conditions were especially poor. Haskins managed 6 successful scenarios, solid performance, but he'd hesitated on 2 shots, resulting in simulated hostage deaths. As each shooter performed, Sarah studied everything. She watched where targets appeared, noting patterns in their placement. She observed how long each scenario lasted, memorizing timing sequences. Most importantly, she let her eyes adapt to the darkness, refusing to look at any light source, building her natural night vision to its maximum potential. Finally, Lieutenant Castellano, you're up. Sarah walked to the firing line, her M14 feeling heavier than usual. Or perhaps that was just the weight of impossibility pressing down on her shoulders. She assumed her position and waited for the first scenario. The range lights died completely, absolute darkness. Sarah closed her eyes for 10 seconds, then opened them slowly. The world wasn't black anymore. It was deep gray with hints of definition. She could see the outline of the scenario area, the vague shapes of building facades, the rectangular frames where targets would appear. Scenario 1, the range officer's voice announced. 3 silhouettes at 600 yards, 2 hostile, 1 civilian. Identify and engage, time starts. Now. 3 shapes materialized in the darkness, barely visible, more suggestion than substance. Sarah's mind processed information at lightning speed. The leftmost shape held something, a rifle, judging by the angular projection. Center shape, hands raised, no weapon. Rightmost, weapon shouldered, aggressive posture. Left target first. It was turning to aim. Sarah aligned her iron sights using muscle memory more than vision, leading slightly for the target's movement, and fired. Hit confirmed by the electronic sensor. Right target immediately, before it could engage the hostage. Fire. Hit. 2 seconds elapsed. The hostage remained standing, unharmed. Scenario 1 complete. No casualties. Sarah allowed herself one slow breath before the next scenario loaded. Scenario 2 appeared at 800 yards, even darker area, targets partially obscured by simulated building corners. 4 silhouettes this time. 3 civilians, 1 hostile. The hostile was crouched behind a civilian, using the innocent as a shield. Sarah waited, watching. Movement. The hostile shifted slightly, exposing his shoulder and head for a fraction of a second. She fired into that sliver of space. Hit, hostage unharmed. By Scenario 7, Sarah had entered a state beyond conscious thought. Her shooting had become pure instinct, eyes processing shapes, mind calculating angles, hands moving the rifle before her brain fully registered the decision. She was operating on a level that transcended technique, accessing something primal and perfect. Scenario 8 was the nightmare scenario. Target at 1,200 yards, the range officer announced. Hostage situation, low light conditions, partial obstruction. Time starts. Now. Sarah strained her eyes into the darkness. 1,200 yards, nearly 3/4 of a mile in near total darkness. She could barely see the scenario area, just the faintest suggestion of vertical shapes. Then she saw it. Movement. The smallest shift in shadow density. A hostile silhouette behind a hostage, but positioned so any shot risked hitting the innocent. Sometimes, her father's voice echoed in her memory, you don't shoot what you see, you shoot what you know is there. Sarah couldn't see the target clearly enough to aim conventionally, but she'd watched 8 other shooters attempt this scenario. She knew where the hostile had to be positioned based on the scenario's geometry. She understood the angles, the spacing, the mathematical certainty of where a threat would stand to use a hostage as a shield effectively. She aimed at empty darkness, trusting mathematics over vision, and fired. For 3 heartbeats, silence. Then hit confirmed, hostage secure, Scenario 8 complete. The range erupted. Even competitors who'd been skeptical all week were standing now, staring at the darkness where Sarah had just accomplished something that shouldn't have been possible. Morrison was the first to reach her as she cleared her weapon. That last shot, Sarah, you couldn't even see the target. How? I didn't need to see it, she replied quietly. I knew where it had to be. Master Chief Vance's voice cut through the commotion. Perfect score. 8 scenarios, 8 successful completions, 0 hostage casualties. Lieutenant Castellano extends her lead. The scoreboard updated. First place, LT, Sarah Castellano. Second place, LT, CMDR, Jake Morrison, trailing by 12 points. Third place, LT Haskins, trailing by 19 points. As the competitors dispersed into the night, Vance approached Sarah privately. Tomorrow is the final day. Live fire combat simulation, the most complex scenario we've ever designed. Urban warfare environment, multiple threats, split-second decisions under maximum stress. I'll be ready, Master Chief. I know you will. Vance paused. Lieutenant Commander Harrison submitted a formal complaint tonight, claims your performance is statistically impossible without technological aid. He's demanding an equipment inspection. Sarah's jaw tightened. Let him inspect, he won't find anything. I told him the same thing, but watch your back tomorrow. A man who feels threatened does desperate things. As Sarah walked back to her barracks, Morrison fell into step beside her. You've already won, you know. Even if something goes wrong tomorrow, you've proven everything you set out to prove. I haven't won until I win, Sarah replied. Tomorrow I finish this. Above them, stars emerged between breaking clouds, the same stars that had given her just enough light to accomplish the impossible. Tomorrow would bring the final test, and Sarah Castellano intended to leave no doubt about who the best shooter in this competition really was. Dawn on day 5 arrived with Sarah's hands still trembling from the discovery she'd made 3 hours earlier. In the pre-dawn darkness, she'd inspected her ammunition for the final competition, and found that nearly half the cartridges had been tampered with. Damaged casings, improperly seated primers, powder loads that felt wrong. Someone had replaced her carefully prepared rounds with sabotaged ammunition that could misfire, jam her rifle, or even cause a catastrophic failure that might injure her. She'd reported it immediately to Master Chief Vance, who'd launched an investigation and provided her with fresh ammunition from the armory's secured stock. But time had been against her, barely enough time to inspect the new rounds, no time to practice with them, and now the final challenge was beginning. Day 5, Vance's voice boomed across the range at 600 sharp. Final competition, live-fire urban combat simulation. You'll navigate a mock city environment with multiple buildings, civilians, hostiles, and high-value targets. Scenarios include close-quarters battle, long-range precision shots, and moral judgment calls. Equipment failures, unexpected threats, and time pressure will test everything you've learned. Sarah stood in full combat gear, her M14 loaded with the replacement ammunition. Beside her, Morrison checked his equipment one final time. Haskins stretched, his face set with determination. 11 competitors remained. 4 had withdrawn over the previous days, unable to handle the pressure or defeated by equipment failures. You'll enter the urban environment individually, Vance continued. Course completion time is 60 minutes. Fail to complete within that window and you're disqualified. Shoot a civilian, disqualified. Fail to eliminate a high-value target, major point deduction. This is the culmination of everything we've tested this week. Vance's eyes found Sarah's. Lieutenant Castellano, due to the sabotage discovered this morning, you're authorized to withdraw with your current standing intact. Negative, Master Chief. I'm completing the course. A slight nod from Vance. Alphabetical order. Lieutenant Castellano, you're up third. The first shooter entered the urban environment, a maze of building facades, alleyways, and elevated positions constructed to simulate hostile territory. Gunfire echoed from within. 20 minutes later, he emerged, having completed 6 of 10 scenarios successfully. The second shooter, a SEAL named Petty Officer Davis, managed 7 completions but had hesitated on a critical hostage rescue, resulting in a simulated civilian death. He exited the course visibly shaken. Lieutenant Castellano, Vance called. Sarah stepped to the entry point, her heart rate controlled, her breathing steady. She'd spent her entire life preparing for this moment, not just the past 5 days, but every hour on the range with her father, every competition she'd won, every doubter she'd proved wrong. The buzzer sounded. She entered the urban maze. Immediately, her training took over. She moved along the walls, rifle at the ready, scanning for threats. The first scenario appeared, 2 hostiles at 40 yards in a simulated market area, civilians scattered throughout. Sarah identified the threats instantly, distinguished them from innocents by their weapons and aggressive postures. 2 shots, 2 down. She moved forward. The second scenario was more complex. A building interior, multiple rooms, threats at various distances. Sarah cleared each room with precision, close quarters shooting at 10 yards, then a sudden long-range target appearing at a window 300 yards distant. She dropped to one knee, acquired the target through her iron sights and fired. Hit. Scenario 3. Rooftop sniper at 800 yards, partially concealed behind cover. The target was barely visible, just a sliver of silhouette showing. Sarah calculated the angle, adjusted for the morning wind, and squeezed the trigger. The target dropped. Then at Scenario 4, disaster struck. Sarah chambered a new round and felt the bolt resist, sluggish, not quite right. She pulled the trigger on a hostile threat at 200 yards and the rifle jammed. The cartridge had failed to seat properly, stopping halfway into the chamber. Time didn't stop. The threat remained. Civilians were in danger. Sarah's hands moved with practiced speed, muscle memory taking over. She executed immediate action: pull charging handle, lock bolt to rear, strip magazine, inspect chamber. A mangled cartridge was stuck. She used her cleaning rod section from her gear to drive it out, inspected the chamber for damage, reloaded, chambered a fresh round, and reacquired the target. 28 seconds. Most shooters would have panicked, failed, or given up. Sarah fired, hit. She continued through the course, her confidence growing with each completed scenario. The damaged ammunition had cost her precious time, but she adapted, checking each round before chambering it, discarding 2 more suspicious cartridges, shooting with what remained. Scenario 7 was the technical challenge. 3 hostage takers at extreme range, 100 yards, positioned in different windows of a 3-story building. Obscured positions. Low contrast against the building's dark interior. And the hostages were visible, making any error potentially lethal. Sarah found a shooting position that gave her the optimal angle. Through her iron sights, the targets were barely distinguishable from shadows. But she'd spent 4 days learning to shoot what she could barely see, trusting instinct and mathematics over visual confirmation. First target, left window, 2nd floor. She aimed, compensated for distance and elevation, fired. Hit. Second target, right window, 3rd floor. Higher elevation, slightly different wind exposure. Adjust, fire, hit. Third target, center window, 1st floor, the most obscured position. The hostage was directly in front of the threat, no room for error. Sarah waited, watching for movement. There, the hostile shifted slightly, exposing a narrow angle of vulnerability. She fired into that impossibly small space. Hit, hostage unharmed. The final 3 scenarios tested her judgment more than marksmanship. Ambiguous situations where threats weren't clearly defined, where split-second decisions meant the difference between saving lives and taking innocent ones. A figure with a weapon, but was it pointed at her or surrendering? Sarah held fire for 1 crucial second, saw the weapon lower, and moved past without engaging. Correct, it was a civilian who'd picked up a fallen weapon in panic. 2 figures struggling, one hostile, one friendly, impossible to distinguish in the chaos. Sarah couldn't risk the shot. She moved to a better angle, identified the threat by his tactical gear, and eliminated him without harming the civilian he'd been attacking. The final scenario was deceptively simple: a single hostile at 600 yards, exposed position, clear shot. But something felt wrong. Sarah studied the situation, her instincts screaming warning. Then she saw it, a wire, barely visible, running from the hostile's position to a nearby building where civilians sheltered. A trap. Shooting the hostile would trigger an explosive device. Sarah redirected her aim to the wire itself, a target barely thicker than a pencil at 600 yards. She fired. The wire severed. The trap was neutralized. Then she eliminated the hostile with her next shot. The exit buzzer sounded. Sarah emerged from the urban environment, her uniform soaked with sweat, her rifle's barrel still warm from firing. Master Chief Vance stood with a stopwatch and tablet, his expression unreadable. Time, 42 minutes, 16 seconds. Scenarios completed, 10 of 10. Civilian casualties, 0. High-value targets eliminated, all confirmed. Equipment malfunction overcome in under 30 seconds. Vance looked up from his tablet. Perfect score, Lieutenant Castellano. The assembled competitors fell silent. Morrison was the first to react, starting a slow clap that others gradually joined. Even Haskins, who'd resented her presence from day one, nodded with grudging respect. But Sarah barely heard the applause. Her eyes were fixed on Lieutenant Commander Harrison, who stood at the back of the group, his face twisted with barely contained rage. He tried to sabotage her, tried to make her fail, tried to prove she didn't belong. And she'd beaten his sabotage, along with everything else. As Morrison approached to congratulate her, Vance's voice cut through the celebration. "Lieutenant Commander Harrison, report to my office immediately. Military police are waiting." Harrison's face went pale. Security footage had finally confirmed what everyone suspected. He'd been the one tampering with Sarah's equipment, stealing ammunition, breaking into her quarters. His career was over, ended by his own prejudice and inability to accept that excellence had no gender. Sarah watched him being escorted away, feeling not triumph but sadness. Harrison had let his bias destroy him, when he could have learned something instead. "Hell of a run," Morrison said, arriving at her side. "That malfunction clearance was the fastest I've ever seen, and that wire shot at the end, that was surgical precision under maximum pressure." "Just doing what needed to be done," Sarah replied. "No," Morrison said seriously. "That was leadership. That was showing everyone watching that excellence transcends equipment, gender, or any other arbitrary barrier. You didn't just win today, Sarah. You changed minds." Master Chief Vance approached, his weathered face showing the closest thing to a smile Sarah had seen all week. "Final standings will be calculated tonight. Awards ceremony at 800 tomorrow. But between you and me, Lieutenant," he extended his hand, "your father would be damn proud." Sarah shook his hand firmly, feeling the weight of 5 days of competition finally lifting from her shoulders. She'd proven everything she'd set out to prove and more. Tomorrow would bring the official recognition. But today, in this moment, she'd already won the only victory that truly mattered, respect earned through undeniable excellence. The sun climbed higher over Naval Special Warfare Command, as Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. One more day, one more ceremony, and then a new chapter would begin. The morning of the awards ceremony arrived with California sunshine painting the Naval Special Warfare Command parade ground in golden light. Sarah stood before her mirror in dress uniform, the fabric crisp and perfect, ribbons aligned with military precision. But her eyes kept drifting to the photograph on her footlocker, her father in his marine dress blues, taken just before his deployment to Vietnam in 1967. "I did it, Dad," she whispered to the image. "I won." A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Morrison stood outside, also in dress uniform, his steel trident gleaming on his chest. "Ready for this?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." They walked together to the parade ground, where rows of chairs had been assembled facing a raised platform. Other competitors were already arriving, along with senior officers from multiple branches of service. Word of the competition's outcome had spread through the military community. This wasn't just another training exercise anymore. It had become something historic. Master Chief Vance stood at the platform's center, flanked by a Navy admiral and a Marine Corps Major General. As Sarah and Morrison took their seats in the front row, Vance's eyes found hers and nodded slightly. At precisely 800, the ceremony began. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Admiral's voice carried across the assembly, "we gather today to recognize excellence in one of the military's most demanding disciplines, precision marksmanship. This week's competition tested 15 of our nation's finest warriors under conditions designed to break equipment, challenge skills, and reveal character." He paused, letting his words sink in. What we witnessed this week went beyond technical proficiency. We saw adaptation under pressure. We saw integrity in the face of sabotage. We saw a warrior who refused to make excuses when given inferior equipment, who instead chose to prove that the weapon doesn't make the shooter makes the weapon. Sarah felt every eye turning toward her. The Admiral continued, third place with exceptional performance across all 5 days, Lieutenant Robert Haskins, United States Navy. Haskins stood, accepted his award with professional grace, and returned to his seat. Second place, demonstrating tactical excellence and consistent high-level performance, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, United States Navy, Naval Special Warfare Command. Morrison rose, shook hands with the Admiral, and accepted his award. As he returned to his seat, he caught Sarah's eye and smiled. And now, first place. The Admiral's voice grew stronger. This year's competition was won by a margin that removes all doubt. Perfect scores on days 1, 4, and 5. Leading performance on days 2 and 3 despite equipment sabotage and institutional resistance. The first woman to not only compete in but dominate the Naval Special Warfare Advanced Sniper competition. Sarah stood, her heart pounding. Lieutenant Sarah Castellano, United States Marine Corps. The assembly erupted in applause, genuine, thunderous recognition from warriors who understood exactly what she'd accomplished. Sarah walked to the platform, each step feeling surreal, and saluted the Admiral. "Outstanding performance, Lieutenant," the Admiral said, handing her the trophy, a bronze statue of a sniper in prone position. "You've made history this week." "Thank you, sir. I was simply doing what my father taught me. Let your actions speak louder than words." The Admiral smiled. "Your father would be exceptionally proud, as are we all." But it was Master Chief Vance who stepped forward next, carrying something Sarah hadn't expected, a folded American flag and a small wooden case. "Lieutenant Castellano," Vance's gruff voice softened slightly, "your father, Staff Sergeant Daniel Castellano, served with distinction during the Siege of Khe Sanh. What you may not know is the full extent of his heroism on March 30th, 1968. Sarah's breath caught. Her father had never spoken about specific dates, specific actions. The war had been something he'd carried silently. Vance continued. "That morning, NVA sappers breached our perimeter. They were moving toward the aid station where 30 wounded Marines and 4 corpsmen, including me, were defenseless. Your father was positioned on Hill 861, over 800 yards away. In heavy fog with incoming artillery creating chaos, he engaged those sappers with his M14 rifle using only iron sights. The parade ground had fallen absolutely silent. 17 shots, 17 confirmed kills. He eliminated every enemy combatant before they could reach the aid station. He saved 34 lives that day, including mine." Vance's voice roughened with emotion. "Your father was recommended for the Silver Star, but the paperwork was lost during the base evacuation later that year. He never received the recognition he earned." Vance opened the wooden case, revealing a gleaming Silver Star medal. "Lieutenant Castellano, on behalf of the United States Marine Corps and a grateful nation, it is my honor to present your father's Silver Star, 58 years late, but no less deserved. And it is my privilege to place it in the hands of his daughter, who has proven that his legacy of excellence continues." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as Vance pinned the medal to the flag and placed both in her hands. The weight of it, not the physical weight, but the emotional gravity, nearly buckled her knees. "He taught you well," Vance said quietly, his own eyes glistening. "You shot the exact same way he did, with iron sights, with instinct, with heart. And like him, you saved lives through your actions. This week, you showed dozens of young shooters that technology is a tool, not a crutch. That's a lesson worth more than any trophy." The applause that followed was different this time, deeper, more reverent. These warriors understood they were witnessing something beyond competition results. This was legacy, honor, and history converging. As Sarah returned to her seat, carefully cradling her father's flag and medal, the admiral made one final announcement. Lieutenant Castellano, Naval Special Warfare Command would like to offer you a position as Senior Sniper Instructor. You would be the first woman to hold this position, responsible for training the next generation of military marksmen across all service branches. Sarah stood again, her voice steady despite her tears. I accept, sir, with honor. The ceremony concluded, but the real moment came afterward, when the SEALs who doubted her on day one approached individually to shake her hand. Ma'am, Petty Officer Davis said, the young SEAL she'd helped during the storm, would you consider being my primary instructor? I want to learn to shoot like you do. I'd be honored. Others followed with similar requests. Even Haskins approached, his pride finally set aside. You earned this, Lieutenant, fair and square. I'd appreciate the chance to learn from you. As the crowd dispersed, Morrison found her standing alone, looking at her father's silver star in the morning light. What are you thinking? He asked. That he was right. He always said the deadliest weapon isn't in your hands, it's between your ears. Technology fails, equipment breaks, but knowledge, discipline, and heart never quit. Wise man, Morrison paused. There's something else. I've been assigned as your partner for an upcoming joint task force deployment. 6 months overseas advisory role, if you're interested. Sarah looked at him, this warrior who'd stood by her when others doubted, who'd offered respect before she demanded it, who'd become not just an ally but a friend. When do we leave? 4 weeks. Gives you time to settle into your instructor role first. As they walked back toward the buildings, Sarah glanced one more time at her father's photograph in her mind. Young, strong, certain. He'd given her the tools. The Marines had given her the opportunity. But she'd given herself the courage to prove that excellence has no gender, no limits, no barriers except those we accept. Behind them, her ancient M14 rifle rested in the armory, now marked for preservation. A museum piece that had defeated modern technology through simple truth. The shooter makes the weapon deadly, not the other way around. That evening, Sarah sat in her new office at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center, her father's silver star on her desk beside her trophy. Tomorrow, she'd begin training the next generation of snipers. She'd teach them what her father had taught her, that fundamentals matter more than equipment, that integrity matters more than ego, that excellence is earned through sweat, discipline, and the refusal to accept anything less than your best. Her phone buzzed with a message from Morrison. Dinner. We should celebrate properly. Sarah smiled and replied, only if you're buying. Competition winners don't pay for their own meals. Deal. See you at 1900. She stood and walked to her window, watching the sun set over the Pacific, the same ocean her father had crossed in 1967, heading toward a war that would define him. He'd come home changed but unbroken, carrying skills and wisdom he'd passed to his daughter. And now, decades later, that legacy had come full circle. Sarah Castellano, Lieutenant, United States Marine Corps, first-place champion of the Naval Special Warfare Advanced Sniper Competition, senior sniper instructor, had proven beyond doubt what her father always knew. True warriors are forged not by the weapons they carry, but by the fire within their hearts. The end.
Ma non è sbagliato magari, certo che si può lavorare senza aver studiato, assolutamente, anzi al momento i lavori che non richiedono una laurea, sono quelli che richiedono di più personale, il problema è che non ci sono i soldi per pagarli. Infatti si dice molto spesso che mancano i salumieri, cioè i salumieri, mancano i macellai, mancano gli artigiani, non ci sono più gli artigiani. È anche vero che servono meno rispetto a prima, però comunque servono. Però c'è meno, da quello che ho capito, negli ultimi anni, c'è meno richiesta, non meno richiesta, c'è meno offerta. C'è meno offerta. Ricordate che